screamed out,
Shut down.
shoved aside. That was my final family dinner. My name is Elena Hart, and from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Because I need to ask you something. Has your own blood ever looked at you like a stray dog they couldn't wait to chase away? That's exactly what it felt like. We were sitting at the table, pretending like it was still a family, pretending like the tension wasn't thicker than the mashed potatoes no one touched. My sister, Brielle, slammed her glass down so hard, water spilled across the lace runner. You ruin everything. Every time you walk into a room, it's like the air turns sour. I hadn't said a word the entire evening, just passed the dishes.
Smiled faintly.
Tried to be smaller, quieter. But my silence was apparently the loudest offense. Mom didn't even blink. She just folded her napkin and said, She's right. You're exhausting, Elena. You bring nothing but guilt and need. Always needing something. Just go. I blinked slowly, like maybe I misheard. But then Dad, who used to be my only anchor, reached for the remote and turned on the news. No one even looked at me, like I wasn't a daughter or a sister. Just a burden whose exit would make dinner taste better. So I stood up, picked up my bag, and walked out the front door of the house I had secretly been helping keep afloat, paying off bills, forwarding half my paycheck, keeping the lights on when their pride couldn't admit they needed me. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't even close the door loudly. I just disappeared. And in my silence, something inside me broke. But not in the way they expected. I spent that first night in a tiny Airbnb downtown. Mattress on the floor, ramen on the stove, peace in my chest. It felt like losing a limb but breathing for the first time. The next day, I woke up with one clear thought. They never cared what I gave. So maybe it was time to stop giving. 7 days later, to the hour, I got a text from Mom.
Hey.
Electric's due today. Can you send $180? No apology. No check-in. Just an invoice. I stared at my screen for a full 5 minutes. Then I typed, I thought you wanted me gone. And when she replied, just 3 dots typing for a while, I followed it with, so I made sure the lights would follow me out. I had already removed my name from the utility account the night I left. I didn't even need to explain further, because a minute later, I got a final message from her. Elena, what did you do? I didn't reply, but I knew she'd figured out the moment the fridge clicked off and the TV went dark. There's a strange kind of power in being erased, because once you're no longer expected, you're free to stop sacrificing. They never asked where I was, never wondered if I was okay. But when the power went out and the heating died and the internet stopped working, suddenly I wasn't invisible anymore. 3 days after I stopped paying, I heard through a cousin that my sister Brielle had posted on Facebook. Anyone know how to fight back utility companies who mess up your account? Our power got cut off out of nowhere. Not even a warning. I laughed, because there had been so many warnings. They just never saw them because they never saw me. You see, while Brielle and Mom were sipping wine and slandering me behind closed doors, I was the one filling the gaps. When the mortgage fell behind, I called in the payment. When the water bill was overdue, I wired the cash quietly. When the car broke down, I gave Mom my own. No, thank you. No, we're proud. Just silence until I dared to stop giving. And suddenly they noticed the hole I left behind. Aunt Celia called me next. Sweetheart, your mom's worried sick. The house is cold, Brielle's furious, and your mom's too embarrassed to ask for help.
But you know she didn't mean what she said.
Families fight. I closed my eyes and whispered into the phone. She didn't fight me. She banished me. She was upset.
So was I.
But I didn't ask them to leave my life. Aunt Celia went quiet, then said, They're saying you're being dramatic, that you're making them suffer on purpose. I almost laughed, because for once they were half right. It wasn't about revenge. Not really. It was about balance. If I wasn't welcome in their lives, then neither was my effort. My money, my time, my loyalty. On day 10, I got a voicemail from Brielle. Her voice was tight, angry. You could have told us you were taking your name off stuff. This isn't funny, Elena. Grow up. Mom's health is acting up from the stress. If anything happens to her, that's on you. I stared at the phone. No apology. Just blame.
Still.
I almost replied. Almost. But then I remembered her yelling, "Get out of our lives," like it was a prayer. And I realized she never meant to say sorry.
She just wanted control back.
I started documenting everything. Screenshots of payments I'd made, receipts, text messages. I stored it all in a private Google Drive folder labeled "The Cost of Being Disposable." Not for them.
For me.
To remind myself that I wasn't crazy, that my kindness had receipts. And now, so would their regret. By week 2, the lawn grew wild. The mail piled up. They posted a passive-aggressive GoFundMe titled, "Help a mother and daughter save their home." I didn't donate, but I watched. And I waited, because I knew what was coming. And this time, I wouldn't be the one paying the price. When you stop holding up a collapsing house, people finally hear the creaking. But it's never gratitude that follows. It's panic. The messages kept coming in bursts. First silence, then guilt, then threats, then desperation. One night I got a text from Mom. "Elena, please. The water's off now. We're boiling snow.
Just send what you can.
Don't do this to us." Don't do this to us? I read that line over and over again. Like I hadn't spent 3 years cleaning up behind them, scraping my own dreams to dust so they could live in comfort. Like I hadn't walked in from my 12-hour shifts, only to find her feet up on the couch, sipping wine, watching soap operas while my paycheck kept the walls from falling. And now I was the one doing this to them. A week later, a neighbor posted on the local Facebook group, "Does anyone know what's going on with the Hart family? Their front porch light has been off for days, and I saw someone delivering notice papers." I didn't comment, but I watched the replies. Heard the daughter left. The younger one's always been entitled.
Sad.
The mom used to be so kind. I almost laughed at that last one.
Kind?
She once told me I had a failure face at 17, said I should just get married instead of chasing college. And when I did get into university on scholarship, she rolled her eyes and said, "Don't come crawling back when you realize books don't pay rent." But it was my rent money that had been keeping her lights on. I checked the bank account I used to wire money from. The automatic payments were all shut off. Every last one. I wasn't being cruel. I was being honest. They'd made it clear I wasn't family anymore. So I stopped acting like I was. Meanwhile, I was learning to breathe. Really breathe. I picked up hours at a co-working space. Started teaching coding workshops for women trying to leave toxic jobs. For the first time in years, people were thanking me, saying I mattered, telling me I was brilliant, not burdensome. One night, my old boss, a woman named Ms. Clark who had once mentored me during an internship, messaged me out of the blue. I heard what happened at home. I just wanted to say, if you ever want to pitch that app idea you told me about, I have 3 investors interested in female founders. Let me know. I sat with that message for 10 whole minutes, then typed, "I'd love to." That night, for the first time in forever, I slept without grinding my teeth. Back at their house. I knew what was coming. Mom and Betrayal had spent years building their kingdom on my quiet shoulders. And now that I'd stepped out from underneath, their throne was rotting. They kicked me out like garbage. But I rose like fire, quiet, hot, and unstoppable. Not with vengeance. With vision. 3 weeks after I left, I walked into a small conference room inside a glass tower downtown. I was wearing the same blazer I'd bought from a thrift store 2 years ago. But now I wore it like armor. Ms. Clark introduced me to the 3 investors with a smile. "This is Elena Hart. She's developing a platform for remote caregivers and home managers, the ones who hold families together but never get seen." They nodded politely until I spoke, and then they listened. I pitched the app I'd once scribbled in a notebook between overnight shifts and grocery trips. An app that helps women track, manage, and bill the invisible labor they do, cooking, cleaning, budgeting, the unspoken jobs that held households like mine together until I walked away. I called it Unseen. 6 weeks later, I had funding. 8 weeks later, I had a team. 10 weeks later, our beta version was live. Meanwhile, back in my old neighborhood, their lights came back on, temporarily, thanks to a loan from some second cousin in Alabama. But by then, the gossip had already spread. Brielle was never the smart one. I heard Elena's doing something big now. She's on LinkedIn every week getting awards. One day, I got tagged in a comment under a photo from a Women in Tech event. Is this the same Elena Hart who used to live on Willow Street?
I didn't reply.
But I knew who would see it. A week later, I got another message from Aunt Celia. Your mom's asking about you again. Says she might have been harsh. Wants to talk.
Talk.
She didn't want to talk. She wanted to negotiate. But I wasn't for sale. Because while they were inside that house growing cold, I was out here becoming someone they never expected. I was speaking on panels, doing podcasts, writing op-eds with titles like, When Family Doesn't Value You, Build Your Own Legacy. Each time, I imagined Mom reading those words in her dim kitchen, her pride choking on every sentence. One evening, I walked past a bookstore and saw a flyer. Women Who Led Anyway, panel event, March 3rd. My name was on it, in bold, with the words, Founder,
CEO,
Advocate.
I stared at it for a long time.
And then I walked in and bought every last copy of the magazine I was featured in, not for them.
For me.
For the girl they said would never be anything. Some houses collapse in storms. Others just rot from the inside, after the only one holding it up walks away. It started with an unpaid gas bill, then a notice for overdue taxes. Then the Homeowners Association filed a complaint, something about property disrepair, unkept lawn, and vermin sightings. I didn't know any of this firsthand. I just watched it unfold online. Their once glossy lives started peeling like cheap wallpaper. One post from Brielle said, Does anyone know how to fight an eviction when your name's not technically on the deed?
I stared at that sentence. Technically. Right.
Because everything had been in Mom's name and mine, not Brielle's. Not the golden girl, who deserved better than bills. The legal documents had always shown my name as co-signer, not for credit, for stability. Because I had the job, the record, the reliability. They just had the audacity. That's when it hit me. They were unraveling because I'd stopped covering for them. Not because I'd sabotaged them, but because I'd stopped saving them. Then the foreclosure letter came. It was shared, again, in a local group chat. Someone posted, The Hart family house is listed for auction. So sad how quickly things can fall apart. So sad. I made tea and watched the comments roll in. Meanwhile, my own world was blooming. I'd just hired 2 new engineers. We were featured on a top startup watch list. I got an email from a national talk show asking if I'd appear for a Women's History Month special. I read the invite while sitting on a sunny cafe patio. The kind of place my family used to say was for show-offs with no responsibilities.
But now I was the show.
And the receipts? They were all in my name. That night, Mom called. Her number popped up like a ghost from another life. I stared at it ringing until it stopped. Then she texted, Elena, the house is going. We don't know what to do. Please call me.
I didn't call.
I just replied, You told me to leave your life. I did. So did my help. No exclamation. No insult. Just finality. Later that week, I got a letter in the mail. From the bank. It was a notice confirming the removal of my name from the mortgage. I'd filed for it quietly.
Cleanly.
Now it was official. The house they kicked me out of? No longer my burden. No longer my business. She tried to silence me with shame. But when the world heard my truth, her silence became permanent. It was a Friday night when the producer called. We've been following your startup's journey. We'd love to have you on the show. Something special for Women's History Month. Are you open to it? I was quiet for a moment. I thought about all the times I'd bitten my tongue. The birthdays missed because I was working. The promotions declined so I could send extra money home. The way Mom once said, You were always more help than heart. And now the world wanted to hear my voice. I smiled. I'm in. The studio was bright and cold. I sat across from the host, a woman I'd admired for years, and she asked, "You've built something incredible from scratch. But the name of your company, Unseen, where did that come from?"
I didn't hesitate.
It came from years of doing everything and being treated like I was nothing. It came from holding families together while being told I wasn't really part of one. It came from being erased and choosing to reappear on my own terms. Silence. Then applause. Then a single spotlight. And for the first time in my life, I felt seen. The episode aired 3 days later. It went viral overnight. I got messages from strangers, women saying, "That was my story. You said what I never could. Thank you for reminding me I'm not alone." But one message stood out. From a neighborhood friend I hadn't spoken to in years. "Your mom watched it. Didn't say a word for hours. Just stared at the screen. Then she got up, turned the lights off, and went to bed without dinner." I didn't know how to feel.
Not joy.
Not pity. Just freedom. Because the girl they kicked out, the one they mocked for being too soft, too emotional, too much, she now had influence. And they had bills. They'd traded a daughter for control. And ended up losing both. A week later, I did a panel at a tech summit. At the end, I was handed a plaque that read, "Voice of the Year." I held it in my hand and remembered Mom's voice in my head. "No one wants to hear about your little struggles, Elena. Grow up." So I looked into the camera and said, without shaking, to every woman who is told she talks too much,
Talk louder.
to every daughter who is told she's ungrateful, know your worth. And to every person who is erased to keep the peace, come back louder than the silence they left you in. Thunderous applause. Flashbulbs. A standing ovation. And somewhere, in a dark house with unpaid electric bills, my mother watched that clip on a dim phone screen, charging off a neighbor's outlet. Some homecomings aren't about closure. They're about proof that you made it, without the hands that dropped you. It was a cloudy Sunday morning when I returned to the neighborhood.
Not to see them.
But to see me. The version of me that used to walk home with groceries in both arms, while Brielle sat on the couch texting boys. And Mom muttered, "Why can't you just be more alike?" I parked at the edge of the block. The old house was smaller than I remembered. Chipped paint, sagging roof, the curtains drawn like secrets. I didn't knock. I didn't need to. I walked to the mailbox and slipped in a letter. Nothing long. Just the truth. "You asked me to leave."
So I did.
And with me went the light, the loyalty, the lifeline. You told me I was a burden, but I paid the bills. You told me I wasn't family, but I was the foundation. So this isn't a reconciliation. It's a reminder.
I didn't abandon you.
I honored your request. Elena. Then I turned around and left. That was the last time I ever stepped foot on that street. A week later, Aunt Celia sent me a message. "Your mom got the letter." She cried for hours. Didn't say a word. Just sat at the kitchen table staring at it. She said Mom keeps the envelope tucked into her Bible now, as if praying might turn back time. But you can't pray away reality, especially when you chose it. Especially when the daughter you tossed aside becomes the woman every mother now points to and says, "Be like her." Meanwhile, I was speaking at high schools, launching mentorship programs, and investing in shelters for displaced women. One of them approached me after a talk and asked, "What gave you the strength to leave?" I didn't hesitate. The moment I realized staying wasn't loyalty, it was slow death. She nodded like I'd given her a sword. And maybe I had. Back at home, the house went up for sale. Again. This time at a loss. Mom moved into a tiny apartment near the freeway. Brielle floated between friends' couches and bad decisions. And me? I was featured in Forbes. The headline read, "The girl they discarded, now building empires for women like her." Sometimes I wonder if she reads my articles. If she clicks the links, watches the interviews, hears my voice, and realizes that silence she demanded, it didn't destroy me. It made space for everything she feared most. My success. My truth. My voice. Some people throw you out of their story, forgetting the world's watching yours unfold. And in mine, they're just a footnote to my rise. It was a gala of velvet gowns, camera flashes, crystal chandeliers. The kind of room my mother once said wasn't made for girls like us. Funny, because now I wasn't just in it, I was headlining. Entrepreneur of the Year, they called it. But to me, it was just the final chapter of a book they never let me write. Until I walked away. They played a tribute video, clips of interviews, news segments, charity initiatives. Then came a surprise. A photo, an old one, of me at 12, standing outside our broken front door holding a report card with straight A's. No one had celebrated that moment.
Until now.
I took the stage. I looked into the sea of faces. And I said, I used to think success meant approval from my family, from my past. But I learned something stronger. Success is building a life so full, you no longer wait for someone else to clap for it. The audience rose. Applause thundered. But I was thinking about a woman miles away, sitting in a dim apartment, surrounded by silence and unpaid bills, watching me on an old TV, borrowed from a neighbor.
Mom.
The camera panned to the plaque in my hands. Elena Hart. Resilience. Reinvention. Revolution. She once said I brought nothing but trouble. And yet, here I was, funding education for girls like me, opening shelters under my foundation's name, changing lives with the same hands she said were only good for holding burdens. I didn't call her. I didn't send the footage. But I know she saw it.
How?
Because that night a florist told me. We got a delivery request from a woman who couldn't afford the full arrangement. She just wanted a single white rose sent anonymously. I didn't need a card. I knew who it was. And I didn't send anything back. Some wounds don't need stitches. They just need space to stop bleeding where no one cared. Final narration. They screamed for me to leave. And when I did, the silence echoed louder than their words ever could. They erased me from their home, but I became a name their world would never forget. And the girl they discarded? She didn't come back for revenge. She came back untouchable.